narcissistic mom has used to talk and how we adopted this kind of language. I also want to talk about using terms like narcissistic mom and like flying monkeys and like gaslighting, and how I have my own discernment about using them, because it might stay like a separation from us, like a diagnosis, like something which says, oh, this is, how it is, and then I have this, instead of saying how it makes us feel, what we think about this, how we describe it, and how we can detect it at the moment it comes. It might help, a term like that would be fine. And what we say and how we say it gets into and how we think about it, gets into our belief system, and it turns out that we become this, right? So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to get you a little bonus in the end about habits, and I get going. Narcissistic moms, abusive parents, narcissistic partner also. The dynamics can be very similar, and there's really some clear cutting points where we can point out that things are going well or not going well. And one thing is to always look outside of ourselves. It is obviously necessary to read the signs, to feel or perceive the stimuli. Stimuli, I think is the word. And to react to them and to discern them, to let them sink in, to create something new out of that, maybe a new habit, a new way of speaking, a new way of setting boundaries, a new way of rejecting to think about ourselves because of what we perceive, and we dismantle that. We recognize that this is not ours, this is not for us, and this is nothing that we're gonna keep on adopting, right? So we can, through our language, pull basically negativity into our bodies, into our beings, into our beings, and language doesn't happen only once it goes out here. Language is being formed already in my mind. It's a way of self-dialoguing. It's a way of self-talk. It's a way of thinking. And as I mentioned before, the way we think is what we start to believe. And our belief system is something which is even more sunk into us, which sinks into our subconscious mind. So talk, know, evaluate and notice things, the cognitive faculties, they are our conscious mind. And we can, navigate through this by changing the way we talk, by changing the way we perceive things and talk to ourselves. But then there's happening like a second stage, and this is the actual real stage where change occurs, all right? And this is what sinks down into our belief system, what sinks down into what I believe of myself is true. Of course, if I have listened to a narcissistic mother, to a narcissistic father maybe also, or both of it, or to abusive family members, or if I was maybe scapegoated in the family, whatever it was, that I was the one absorbing all the negativity, let's say I incorporated that into my self-understanding, into my very personal being and understanding of who I am. It's a belief system. I believe, and I don't think that. I might not think that because it comes like from down under up from our subconscious mind, which is not a present mind. It is something very much connected to our feelings, to our self-worth, to our self-love, to our subliminary messages we're giving to ourselves after listening a lifelong to all these people who have surrounded us with negativity, and we have adopted this and incorporated this into our self-understanding, into what we think and deeply believe we can or we cannot. And it's usually what we cannot, since they have talked negative talk to us, right? So this is something really, really, really important, that you don't only start to identify when somebody talks to you in a manner which is disrespectful, which is humiliating, which is ignoring you, which is playing you, which is manipulative, which is, at some point a person comes close, but you already know, you hear already the bells ringing, that it is only to hook you, and to later on let you fall again like a hot potato, to see you really on the ground once this hope came up. And why did this hope came up, and why are you still so dependent on this person? Question? Tell me in the comments. No, I'm going to keep on talking. Because you learned, we all do this as children, as people who are dependent on someone at a certain stage in our lives. We look for approval and for love and for identity and for belonging in other people to tell us, right? There's much understood about learning by observation and learning from models, let's say. And we do this as children. Sometimes we don't have to be told things to understand this is how the role goes, to go with the flow, to go with the crew, to belong to the flock, And we just read our environment. So we understand what we have to do to be applauded, or what we have to do to get like a bad look, or even worse things, to be scrutinized or whatever it is. So understanding this from very early on, we need to kind of go back and understand how were those messages, and if they still keep coming up here today, we need to identify them obviously in the here and now, which is helpful, because sometimes the way people have evaluated us is getting so lost, so incorporated into our being and to our self-understanding, to our self-image of who we are and how people like us, and how much approval they give us, when, for what or not, so that we have adopted a system of habits, a system of automated responses, a system of it's almost, I don't want to exaggerate, but it's almost like an addiction, that we look for this, that we see if we can, since we haven't gotten it, and there has we were left with much void inside ourselves, with no love, with being unloved, with feeling unworthy, with feeling not belonging, with feeling lonely, So we have learned to check the outside to understand, how do I have to behave? It's almost like behaving just a little bit, and to see how they reacted, since the situation was so tense and things were so crazy that, that you possibly couldn't understand what to do to be right, to be liked, to be loved, to be congruently applauded, or let's say at least approved of, so that you became a total antenna, for what was going on everywhere. And you read people more than yourself. So everybody is looking obviously for approval and for recognition, for love, basically, outside ourselves. But the idea is, in the ideal setting, that this love is being poured, since we are so cute when we are children, it is poured into us. So people like automatically, out of their impulses, you could say, out of their subconscious DNA creation, humankind. I mean, we're so far away from that. It's almost like strange to tell. Almost you got to explain that this is, how we were made, and we, people usually look at children and be they beautiful or not, or apt or not, it has nothing to do with this. And they're, they pour love in them, and they encourage them and say, this is so fine, oh, you can do this already. I mean, this is a totally natural behavior, and if there was a break, if there was an incision with me being filled with love, with approbation, with, approval, then I will start getting into this unhealthy, let's call it unhealthy cycle, where I'm constantly so, was it not good? Since this is so empty, so I'm always like, was it not good? So we look for this approval, and we do anything as children to get it. And since these are, excuse me, sick people who are, many people were growing up with, so these people will never give this to you. So the void becomes, in reality, even with each day, bigger, deeper, more profound. Since you grow and the void, seems to be staying down there where you were little. And what we kind of like exaggerate doing is more and more looking for the approval, for the thumb up, for, yes, you did things right, outside of us. And tricky. A second thing will be happening throughout time, that at some point as children we start to assume that they will not approve, that I will not get the love, that I will not feel loved by them, that they will not think I'm worthy. And we start even like projecting this into people. I always talk about this, you are happy, or when you were in love with somebody, I bet you know this, that somebody would notice and would say, you look so happy, and people are all reacting to you happy. Or if you go outside and you're really like in a good mood and you're like this, you're cheerful and smile at everybody, and you notice everybody smiles back, obviously, And when we are really angry and really tense, people capture it, They're like, oh my God, how's she going? How's he, going? And this is a problem, because we can almost, out of this real, let's say, deep insecurity we're having, we can almost like cause this. I mean, don't kill me, I don't want to put the blame on you as if you were the person creating this. Please don't get into this role, but get into a dynamic where you can expect rather being, left, being not seen, being not perceived, being even, you can even have a negative expectation if you were hit physically, for example, that somebody would like do this and you would like go like this, because you have an inner expectation. This person might have not had this intention, but you might have a reaction which was yours. And this also happens on a much more subtle way with other expectations where this is not so obvious, like the examples I was now using. So this entire void leads us to constantly look outside of us for approval, and we can't get into this role anymore to understand that now it's time, let's say, to to fill myself, to approve of myself, to ask myself if I'm right because I'm confused, I can figure this out. So when I have received all this negative language, here we're coming from, I absorb this language as being something which my subconscious mind, if that goes only until here, but this is what I really feel deep down inside of my soul, and this doesn't bubble up, into my head only as an expectation, a negative expectation. I can start thinking that it is not okay to talk to me in a negative way, or it is not okay for me to talk in a negative way. But I will not change if I don't start filling up this subconscious mind, I'd say this bowl, where my feelings are. And I usually have to connect at some point, if you can, replace your negative expectations and your subconscious mind by trying to really focus on the goals, on how you want to talk, of how you want to be perceived, on how you love yourself, and how you feel worthy, and feeling this and getting you constantly into this well-feeling state of mind, state of feeling. You might replace your subconscious mind with your negative belief system at some point. For me, I can't do it only that way. I need to connect. I needed to connect to the situations. I needed to see the situations where, like, meditations have like specific meditations of, let's say, visiting my childhood, some childhood rooms, or doing all kinds of work where I start getting visualizations about certain moments in my past, and I say it's a lot of grace. It's such an unconscious work when an image comes back to me where I understand, where I connect suddenly to what it was, what made me carry around this void with me for lifelong, because I couldn't feel it anymore. I didn't want to feel it because it was either hurting or it was unconscious. So there was something maybe happening and some person left, and I just see this person leaving as a kid, and I as a kid didn't know if this person would come back. Okay. And I don't carry this around with me because maybe I said some things in life, and then our caregivers would say, no, you don't always be so afraid that they wouldn't come back. They always come back. So I incorporate this into my mind, and I'm like, no, they always come back. It isn't like that. But the truth is that I still needed to connect to this surprising moment of a child who totally innocently perceives at some point something what it can't deal with, that a person leaves, or a person is unjust, or a person is really brutal, or a person, whatever kind of abuses or abandonments were happening in your life, that you as a child perceived this very differently. And if it would be just like a millisecond, where you would believe that something wasn't right, that you couldn't know, that children don't have an idea to say, oh, it comes back next week, or we're going to be there in 10 minutes, when we're going on a journey or something. Children don't understand that. They don't know what that is, okay? So they see a person leave, for example, and they don't know if they're going to come back. Or they see a person being really aggressive and they don't know if it's going to happen again, So we get really impressed in our emotional lives with impressions. Yeah. And to reconnect to them, I always say there's a lot of grace, but there's a lot of work in it too. The work is to do at the moment it pops up again here in reality. So you need to see, what is it what makes you sad, feeling abandoned, feeling crazy, feeling like too happy, like getting out of your, everything, or whatever it makes you feel sad, like a deep sadness or depression. You need to see what triggered these feelings. You need to read how people treat you in the here and now. Do people ignore you? Do people treat you once like this, once like that? Do people be fast aggressive with you? Are people unlogic with you? Are people, you tell it. You can write down, you can comment in the comment section, to give me an idea of what is it for you? What do you see? How people always treat you? And this is going to change once you tear out the layers of hurt, of abandonment, of all this void. The next layer comes up, and the next impression comes up. Okay, and what I really encourage you to do is to get into this feeling and to get into trying to read what is mirror to you in the here and now, in your actual relationships, and to ask yourself, why does this person treat me this way? If they treat you all good, it's great, you're not going to question that. But you will have relationships where you will fall back into patterns, and then you need to dismantle that, and say, let me see this, why are you treating me like this? Or I always say by grace, because when we start this healing work, it just comes up little by little that things are going to be shown to us. It's much of law of attraction, where I am energetically, what I'm searching for, my quest is, there's going to be presented clues into my life, because I need to work towards this goal, and then my entire being pulls in clues I want to read, and it will come to me. So this is my recommendation, that you check back when you observe there's somebody treating you this or that way. Now, there was the whole subconscious thing and the belief system and reading in the here and now, what has happened back then and how I learned it and how I learned to understand who I am. But then again, we can give constantly, and this is like the pitfall at this moment, we can give ourselves constantly negative messages by repeating. I call this the inner critique, or you can simply call this negative talk, or however you want to call this, and to be really attentive of how I talk about myself, about others, even about my abusers, about my narcissistic mother, my narcissistic ex, my narcissistic father, my narcissistic whatever it is, brothers and sisters, the entire family or the entire dynamics, okay? And identify how they used to talk to you. Do they still talk to you like this? And is it the way that how I adopted to think and to express myself and to inner talk? Even if your inner talk is a talk of, let's say, jealousy. Oh, she just has it because this and that, Oh, he just has it because, oh, he was lucky, he was given these things in life, This is like this jealous talk, which is a talk of, I'm not having it and I will not ever have it, and I don't know how to make it. Let's put it like this, yeah? And it is not serving you. It is not serving you because it keeps you inside of the loop of negative thought, negative thinking you can't come, surge, you can't come up, you can't change, you can't heal, you can't be different, you can't be renewed, and you can. But our affirmations, our language, how we do the inner talk, how we allow other people to talk to us is crucial in understanding how I am going to be dealing with the lower parts, with the emotional parts, with my belief system. Affirmations is good, and what is really beautiful, you can find those on internet also, is these alpha and beta and this and that hertz waves, music, so frequencies, I think I for myself, I had found myself at some point really, really beautiful ones, with, I think this was like, there's different ones. They have like these 628, 423 or 32 hertz. You'll find them. They touch like something different inside of you. And sometimes they come with affirmations, which was really beautiful for me at the point when I was working through this. And there's so much in the subconscious, and I had moments, when in the affirmations were saying, and I love myself, that I was like, I don't love myself, this doesn't feel like it, and I had listened to it maybe many times, but then boom, it was ready to come up, and then I could see a situation, where I was not feeling loved, where I felt they were rejecting me. And you can train yourself, to get back to those moments and to dissolve them practically. Okay, be really careful with negative thought, with negative talk, and especially with negative self-talk. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things. I was talking about what you think is what you believe, and what you believe, you create a story, a narrative around this, and this is inner talk, this is self-talk, where you say, oh well, my mother always treated me badly, and my mother always did this and that, and it keeps on being the other person. And parallelly, I want to talk about this. We need to be a little bit careful. It's good to name, give the child a name, to be able to call it something. It gives us something almost to, we can touch, we can feel, we can perceive. Like saying, this is a narcissistic mom. This was a narcissistic spouse, or a narcissistic partner. Or an abusive, whatever, father, uncle, brother, whatever it was, okay? It is okay to use those terms, but there is like a little danger, I would say, inside of that. And the danger is, it's almost like a diagnosis, that you say, I have this now, this is me, I had a narcissistic mother, and this is how she was, and this is nothing I could change ever in life. Almost into this direction does that go? And this is not true. If you are going on a behavioral level of understanding how they treated you, or how that felt, or how you call this, I personally think you can discern this. You can give me a comment. I respect, if this is easier for you to say, to give labels, to give etiquettes, to give stigmas, you can almost say. Or if we go a further way, once we have recognized this as being there, or if it doesn't make sense maybe to give it a name of how it feels to me, of how the behavior is, to recognize the behavior. The language is that I recognize the language, and then I know I don't want this, and then I know I will have to put boundaries, and then I know I will have to separate myself from that. Do you get me? I hope you understood that a little bit. And I wanted to get into something else. I was talking about when I am not able to set boundaries, and this is like really related to what I was talking about right now. If I don't feel able to set boundaries, this is because I have a belief system that I don't deserve it. It's clear. Don't you think so? So if I believe that I can't set boundaries and I do it anyways, it is possible that you don't believe yourself and that you feel rotten afterwards, that you feel guilty, that you feel shameful, that you feel you were too much or too less, or that you get into the inner critic thing, you know. And you need to be very careful with this, that you set boundaries and that you start again. This is the subconscious feeling, what I was talking about before. It is not enough to set boundaries and to set them from here, from my head outwards. What you really need to do is to set boundaries and to, let's say, to feel them, to have them suck down and to reaffirm yourself in getting the critique, the inner critique out of it, you know, and reaffirming that you deserve this boundary, that you didn't communicate it perfectly, but you did it, thank God, you know, and that it wasn't maybe elegant, and that maybe when you set boundaries, very often, especially those kind of people, they will like bring out their arms, you know, and attack, you know, and try to get you with even more energy and push and manipulation and tricks and triggering into the position you were before you put the boundaries, or not to say even deeper, you know, that you wouldn't even think about coming up against them. Okay, so be careful that you believe yourself the boundaries you are setting. Okay? It's the same thing which goes a cognitive thing and feeling it down here. You always need to get down, up until your subconscious mind, up until how you feel about it deep down, until your belief system, you know, to change your paradigm, to change how you really feel about yourself, because you can change it, but you need to get into these feeling states, into your belief system, and for this you need to do the talk, okay, and the thinking, the language, you know, the cognitive part of replacing your bad feelings. While, you know, imagine you found a puppy dog who was really mistreated and was maybe, you know, driven over, or, you know, these photos of dogs being like in, you know, in tubes or whatever, you know, like stuff. So this dog is really damaged, and maybe purposefully damaged, you know, from mean humans. We know all those stories, you know, which really like tear out our hearts, you know, that we would love to save the world. Now imagine how you can train a dog little by little, that you can come closer, that it will feel more confident with you, that it will feel trusting you, that it feel love in the end, you know, that it will get back to its really, let's say, like tender and most beautiful loving state, like with all this trust which was put into it by God, you know. And imagine this, that this is possible, and you can do this with yourself too. I hope you like the comparison. I like it. I don't want to compare it with dogs, but you know. So the language, how, you know, to put boundaries and to believe yourself, understand how beliefs about ourselves were created and that we can replace them. And in the end, to try to do daily habits which are elevating you, which are, building you, which are making you understand that you can. You need to use habits in the way you think about yourself, in the way you, when you look into the mirror, how you talk to yourself, in how you think about others, in the way how you think about your life, how you can or can't not, the way you think about you're able to put boundaries or how good or not good you're supposedly doing it. So talk to yourself like to really a small kid you really want to encourage all the time and create habits. Habits are carrying us through time, especially through hard times. And stop the dark thinking, the giving in to stress, to losing your vision, to only reacting. Stop that. Stop that. Create a habit of positive thinking, of boundary setting. You need to understand if something negative comes up. Of course you do, and you need to assess what is going on and where it came from. But don't like dwell on it. Don't get sucked in by it. Don't get stuck with it, See what it is and keep on with your vision. Keep on with your habits of positive self-talk, of talking you up, instead of talking you down, of letting yourself down. And that's probably what I wanted to talk to you about today. My name is christinajunge. I'm coming up a little late after 37 minutes introducing myself. I'm a love and leadership mentor. I would love to have you here on my channel. You can subscribe. And if you are interested in coaching, I'm still having some sessions open at this point. You can send me an email for a strategy call to see if you want to work with me. And if I want to work with you, we got to see if this works with our value system and all these things. But I love to have you folks around. I know you enjoy those videos. I get those comments. And check out the videos which are coming up left and right now as the next proposition next coming up. Thank you for listening. I love you all, and until my next video, check them out.